Busy week, a lot going on this week, kind of the first week of December. I want to get to at least three different items and cover them all in some detail, but I just want everyone to know watching, while December for some people is a slow time in politics and policy, it is not for the Washington State Republican Party. We are very busy right now preparing for the next few months and few years here in Washington State, where we are determined to fix what's broken. So what does that mean this week? Well, probably of most important is something that just happened today, Friday, I'm recording this. The WGOP has filed a lawsuit in Clark County challenging that county election officials updating or lack of updating of registered voter databases in Clark County, with particular focus on the razor-thin state Senate race in the 18th legislative district. That's one of the legislative districts in Clark County in southwest Washington. Vancouver's the biggest city in the county. The ledge district we're talking about has some of the suburban areas around Vancouver. And that state Senate race, the difference is just about 180 votes. It's under 200 votes. And what we found is that a much larger number of voters in that state Senate race, over 1,000 voters in that state Senate race, don't live in that district any longer. They either moved out of it to live in another part of Washington, or in some cases moved out of state, or, gosh, I don't know, may have moved out of the country. But they don't live in the district anymore. And it's not a few. It's over 1,000 of those votes are people who've moved out of the district. And the difference in that election for state Senate was under 200 votes. So the state party, WGOP, believes that difference is significant and actually defining of that race. That race for the state Senate currently in recount. There's going to be a recount this coming week. And we think it's important that we get a court to look at that with the number of people who voted in it who don't live in the area anymore. What the heck are those people doing voting? And more importantly, why aren't election officials in Washington State doing their duty and updating their databases so that people who've moved away aren't voting in their areas? When we have 100% mail-in voting like we do in Washington State, the pressure on election officials to make sure their voter databases are updated is larger. It's more. When you vote in person, there's a natural updating that happens to voter databases. When you do it all mail-in, there's no built-in updating system. The county auditors and election officials have to do the updating themselves. And our argument here is that in this case, an election decided with a margin of less than 200 votes, 1,200 or more votes from outside the district shouldn't have happened. This is part of the WGOP's ongoing effort in state and federal courts to try to clean up our voter rolls and improve election integrity in Washington State. Now, we are looking for help from the incoming Trump administration in D.C. at the federal level to help set some standards about election integrity. But in the meantime, we are operating in the best venue we have, which is the court system, to try to force some improved election integrity here in Washington State. So hopefully we will get pressure from the federal level, and we will create pressure at the state level, and will improve our election integrity here. Of course, in the long run, as conservatives and Republicans, we would like to see a return to in-person same-day voting. In the meantime, we will fight within the system we have. That's big news, but there's other news, of course, this week. It's pre-filing season in Olympia for bills, proposed law, even some financial budget issues. Pre-filing season is a period of about 40 days before the official legislative session in Olympia starts, when legislators can turn their work in early. They can file their bills ahead of time, ahead of the start of the legislative session. It's a good way to get messages out early. It's a good way to start conversations ahead of the legislative session. I was able, in my capacity as a state legislator, to file the first bill in the Washington State House for the upcoming session, House Bill 1000. It will return the delivery and distribution of fentanyl, basically dealing fentanyl, to a felony status. For the last several years, as many of you know, fentanyl possession or even delivery has been watered down to this kind of weak misdemeanor. We were flirting for a while with complete decriminalization. We don't have that, but currently it's sort of a minor misdemeanor. House Bill 1000 returns felony status to the trade in fentanyl. Fentanyl has been a scourge in our neighborhoods and our communities in Washington. It's a public health risk, a real one, not a fake one. It's certainly a crime risk. And Olympia's soft on crime, soft on fentanyl policies, which are done nominally because of empathy for addicts, have just made addicts worse, their lives worse. They're literally dying on the streets. Young children are dying and getting sick because they touch fentanyl, which in concentration can make them sick just on contact. We have to do more, and we have to do better. We have to give our cops and our prosecutors the tools they need to enforce the law and fight back against this wave of fentanyl, of these drugs on our streets. We've seen too many people passed out on city sidewalks, vomiting, defecating, bleeding on sidewalks in our state. This has to stop, and House Bill 1000 gives the cops and the prosecutors the tools they need. It's not to be vindictive. We don't want to hurt addicts further, but we do want to give them the quick, swift kick in the butt they need to get sober, get off the junk, and get their lives back on track. That's House Bill 1000. And lastly, I've had a bunch of questions this week about the pardon of Hunter Biden. The current president, Joe Biden, after years of saying he would never give a pardon to his troubled son, Hunter Biden, after his staff, the press people, said it would never happen, deny, Joe Biden did issue a so-called blanket pardon, pardoning his troubled adult son who's had drug trouble and legal trouble and financial trouble his whole life, pardoning him from a number of criminal charges. Some he's been convicted of, others were still pending, others were still just allegations. The guy's had a very troubled life. Pardons against all of it. This is a legitimate power of the president, so we as Republicans don't question that, but we do question the use of this legitimate power to pardon people for crimes they've committed or may have committed. The recent word is that the outgoing president, Mr. Biden, may be pardoning other people with blanket pardons. A blanket pardon means you're not just pardoned for a specific crime you committed, but any crime you committed and any crime you may have committed. It's a very broad power. It should be used very judiciously and very rarely. But President Biden, on his way out of the White House, seems to be blanket pardoning a lot of political friends and family members. Frankly, it's hard to criticize a man too heavily for helping his troubled son as he can. But one wonders if President Biden's help of his troubled son has only enabled his troubled son to get into more trouble still. We'll watch and see if President Biden issues more pardons in the days ahead. If it looks like he's using this power irresponsibly, we will raise more questions about it, and I'm sure others will too. But for the moment, we're willing to believe that this is a righteous power available to the U.S. president, and we just believe Mr. Biden should use it more carefully. That's it for this week. A lot going on. I'll be back next week with another update on things happening. Next week begins committee days at the Capitol in Olympia, so there will be a lot of immediate attention on things going on at the Capitol. We'll talk about some budgets and fiscal and tax issues in the weeks ahead. But for now, have a great weekend, be well, and stay strong.